dealing with the SP-12, you know, and I was having a lot of fun with that. And then when the 1200 came out, it was like a marriage.
What's up? You got your boy Dyreck, aka Native Shades, reminding you to like and subscribe, because today we're going to be talking about the SP-1200. What had happened was the SP-1200 came out around the summer of 1987. Yes, 87, the crazy 80s, ladies and gentlemen. 87 was a crazy time. People didn't even have flat tops yet. They was just getting into it. This is how long ago the SP-1200 came out. Now, the 1200 was the successor to the SP-12. What the 1200 offered you different, number one, you got more sampling time. The SP-12, you only had 5 seconds sampling time. With the SP-1200, you had 10 seconds of sampling times. Wow, 10 seconds! 10 seconds is a long time. Like, count a real 10 seconds, people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a long time, you know? So they gave you 10 seconds of sampling time. Also, instead of using the 5.25 floppy disk that they were using on the SP-12, they changed it to the more standard 3.5 floppy disk. And it had an internal floppy disk reader. Wow. This meant a lot. I know right now you're like, oh, okay, we don't use floppy disk. We haven't used them in a minute. But back in 87, floppy disk was being used. Like, you can literally walk over to your local Radio Shack and get a stack of floppy disk. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure they was like, hey, Donnie, a bunch of black kids keep coming in the store and buying floppy disk. What do you think it is? I guess they're really getting into computers. This is probably what the store owners was thinking. Studios were going crazy as far as buying floppy disks for the SP-1200. So what made this machine so great? What made the SP-1200 create songs like Reminisce Over You? Or create songs like, damn, why they want to stick me for my paper? Or create songs like, here comes a brand new flavor in your ear? Or even create songs like, do what you wanna do in living color. What made this machine capable of creating this kind of music? Of course, it's the person behind the machine, but what drew them to this machine? It's ease of use. This machine was so intuitive and it was so easy to use. Like, sometimes if you're not familiar with vintage equipment, it could be kind of intimidating looking at something and saying, oh, okay, it only has 10 seconds of sampling time, or, oh, it has a floppy disk. You'll probably run away and go back to your door in 0.1 seconds. But to tell you the truth, this was a very easy machine to use. That's why a lot of producers loved and still love to this day the SP-1200. The workflow of the SP-1200 simply is this. You sample a sound. You have 8 pads. You have 4 banks. You have bank A, bank B, bank C, bank D. Okay, each bank has access to those 8 pads. So technically it's 32 sounds you can basically sample in there. You know what I mean? So let's say bank A, pad 1, you got your drum loop. Bank A, pad 2, you have a bass sample. Bank A, pad 3, you have a vocal sample. So you just ran the sequence, you press record, and just triggered the sounds and just overdubbed them over each other until you had a cool loop. And you just did a couple of those sequences and you linked them together to make your song. That pretty much was it to the SP-1200. Sometimes, you know, if you're a younger guy and you're looking at like some of the vintage gear, you get really intimidated. And I'm not gonna lie, like, some of the OGs are at fault too, man, because they put you through it, man. Because you could be a young guy, you could be coming into a studio, you see an SP-12, and you're like, hey, wow, man, this is the SP-1200 they talk about? How do you hit the pads like this? And an old guy be like, oh, wait, hold on, don't touch the pads. Yeah, just stand by the door over there. Yeah. The kid's like, yeah, man, I just want to make beats and stuff. Oh, you want to make beats? Really, huh? Do you understand music theory? No? Oh, okay. So if you use the SP, what key will you be playing in? keys? I don't know. I just have my car keys. And you hear that, fellas? He said he had his car keys. Well, okay, just do me this favor, okay? Take the car keys you have in your pocket, right? And go drive your ass back to wherever the hell you came from. And they'll slam the door in the kid's face. This is how some of the OGs treated the younger generation. I'm not gonna lie, okay? Back then, the entry into hip hop was not as simple as it is now, where you can just get a copy of FL Studios and you're a producer. No, back then you had to go through the school of hard knocks to get into the hip hop culture. Basically, you had to go through some gatekeepers. But the thing about it is, if you were persistent and they saw that you had the drive and the love, they let you in. It was each one teach one. You had the OG legendary producers teaching the younger dudes. You had producers like Fanatic out of North Carolina. He made the track Crush on You by Lil' Kim. He taught Ski Beats how to use the SP-1200. And Ski Beats later on went to produce Reasonable Doubt. You had producers like DJ Eddie F, who made the theme song for the show In Living Color. He taught Pete Rock how to use the SP-1200, and Pete Rock's career just took off. You got producers like the late, great Paul C, straight out of 1212 Studios in Jamaica, Queens. He showed Large Professor how to use the SP-1200. And he went on to make classics like Faking the Funk, Looking at the Front Door. He went on to produce on Illmatic. Another thing about the SP-1200 was, you might think, oh man, it doesn't have auto chop. You know, it's gonna be a drag to chop a sample. No way, sir. It is not a drag to chop a sample on the SP-1200. It's actually enjoyable to chop a sample on the SP-1200. Because guess what? When you sample something in there, and let's say you want to trim it, you know, just chop it right to where you want it to chop. The first two sliders, slider 1 controls the start point, and then slider 2 controls the finer positioning of the start point. And then the next two sliders, slider 3 controls the end point, and then slider 4 controls the finer position of the endpoints. So you're just chopping by just manipulating the sliders little by little until you get your loop or your sample right where you want it. It's actually an enjoyable way to chop up a sample. So some of y'all might ask, does the SP-1200 have any, I don't know, cool effects? The SP-1200 is the effect. What are you talking about, YouTuber? The SP-1200 is the effect. How many times do you go to a DAW or some kind of VST or hardware and they have the SP-1200 effect? Oh, get the SP-1200 simulation. Simulation 12-bit SP-1200 effect. The SP-1200 in itself is the effect. It's something about the circuitry in this unit. It's a 12-bit circuitry, but you know, you gotta remember, when you was back in the days playing Mario Brothers and Double Dragon on your Nintendo, that was 8-bit. This is 4 more bits. This is 4 more bits. By the time Street Fighter and all that came out on your Genesis and Super Nintendo, that was 16-bit. That was higher. This is 12-bit. So I know y'all probably saying, oh, okay, so fine. This was the greatest machine of all time, right, Native Shades? No, not really. It did have its negative aspects. Like, some people didn't like the fact that it only had 10 seconds of sampling time. Even though back then, in 1987, 10 seconds was a lot. But as time went on, you kind of wanted more time. You know what I'm saying? Some people didn't like the fact that it doesn't have time stretch. They had to time stretch the manual way, chop it up to itty bits, and then just play it in time with the beat. Some people didn't like the fact that the SP-1200, it's a 12-bit, I think 26.4 kilohertz unit. So, you know, it's great for drums, but sometimes if you have string sounds or, you know, orchestra kind of sounds, it's like, it might make it a little bit too punchy. You might want something a little bit cleaner. So what do? Well, that's when its partner in crime comes in hand. And I think you know what that machine is. You guessed it, the Akai S950. It's Starsky to its Hutch. It's Robin to its Batman. It's Pippin to its Jordan. The S950 from Akai. What the S950 brought to the table was that it had 48 kilohertz of sound quality. So, you know, if you were playing something like strings or, you know, a nice melody, it was a little bit cleaner. And the S950 also had time stretch. And the S950 also had a little bit more sampling time. So combined together, the SP-1200 is your sequencer and what you make your drums on, and you using the S950 as, you could say, the sampler and what you're playing your strings and everything on. Man, it was a marriage made in heaven. So when the SP-1200 came out, it was about $2,700. Now that's a lot of money, especially in 1987. But Emu Systems kept pushing out the SP-1200 for like 10 years. So picture you back in 1987 in 5th grade, listening to Rakim's check out my melody. And you're just thinking, man, I wish I could, you know, start making beats. I heard about this SP-1200, I want one. 4 years passed by. Now you're in 1991. You're over there bopping to Here We Go Yo, Here We Go Yo. So what's the scenario? From Tribe Called Quest. You're in high school right now and you're like, man, yo, that's hard, man. I want an SP-1200, man. If I get an SP-1200, I'd be good. 4 more years pass by. Now you're listening to players, grab you if you love hip hop. Ladies, rub you if you love big pop. Gotcha open off the words I say, cause this type of happens every day. Now you're pretty much in college. And now you're like, yo, I'm gonna put that SP-1200 on layaway. I see Emu Systems still is kicking out the SP-1200, so I'm almost there. 2 more years pass by. Now you're screaming abomatomically, Socrates' philosophies and hypotheses can't define how I'll be dropping these mockeries. And now you finally got the money to buy the SP-1200. So you put down $2,700, or, you know, right now, probably the price dropped a bit, but you put down the money. You leave the store with the SP-1200 in the backpack. You know what I'm saying? You don't want anyone to know what you got. You go home and you start making bangers. So that's the Emu Systems SP-1200. What had happened was... So this is your boy Dyreck, aka Native Shades, reminding you to go down low in the description and go download that How to Make Fire Beats Fast. I'm telling you, if you're new to production or if you just want to get more of an understanding on how to make dope beats, pick that joint up. You know what I'm saying? So this is your boy Dyreck, aka Native Shades, reminding you to like and subscribe. And I'm signing off.